Welcome back. We are now ready to start Module 6, Staffing Projects, in the Using Project and Resource Management with Clarity self-paced training course. In this module, we have 3 learning objectives. The first one, we're going to relook at the project staffing process to see what we've done so far in it and where we are going, what we need to finish to complete a complete project staffing process. The second item has to do with baselining the project. We'll see in the project staffing process that we needed to complete one item before we get into the staffing process, and that one item is baselining the project. So we'll do that in Lesson 2. And then in Lesson 3, we'll begin the staffing the project. And in that lesson, we will take one role, the architect role, and go through the complete cycle of staffing that role. And then we have the hands-on exercise, and we'll actually walk through that. That exercise is to replace all 4 roles, do the staffing, that is, of all 4 roles that we created in Module 5. And so we'll walk through that role by role and do those exchanges. Now we are looking at the project staffing fulfillment process diagram. This was first introduced in Module 4, where we did a walkthrough of the steps in this process flow. And here we want to revisit it and see where we are and where we're going, what we have left to finish. So let's take a look at the diagram. And we begin with item 1, which is create project with Clarity using work breakdown structure template. And we've done that. We did that in Module 5. And then the project manager then does step 2. And let's look at that. Add roles, resources to the project team. Set initial allocation for planning. And basically, that all was done by virtue of the fact that we did the copy from template. So that gave us all that information. And then we go into the stack of the gold box items, which are the detailed planning steps. Develop the WBS, define the dependencies, add roles and ETCs. And then, so those first 3, 1, 2, 3, actually were accomplished by the template. And then we did some refining of that information. We could refine some ETCs as we did. And we could refine some durations and various things like that in the refinement process. And then we get to a point where we're ready to auto-schedule, which we did, item 4, in that gold box stack. And once we're satisfied with the schedule, because you could do that auto-scheduling several times, as we talked about in Module 5, then once that's set and it's good information the way it should be, then we're ready to baseline. And that is the step that we need to do next, as soon as we finish walking through this diagram. So once we have it baselined, then we go to item 3, and we're now ready to communicate with the resource manager. However, before we do that, and as part of that green number 3 box, we really need to take the work that was profiled in the scheduling through the ETC profiles, and we need to translate that back into the allocations. Because right now, the allocations are sitting at broad 100% start to finish, and we need to profile those based on the ETC plans. So we'll do something called allocate from estimates in number 3. And then we're really ready to communicate with the resource manager. The resource manager in number 4 will use some of the resource planning portlets to go through and do some checking, and then from that, find a recommended resource for the role. And that then leads to a discussion of that recommendation between the resource manager and the project manager. And then assuming that it's acceptable and agreed to, then we move over to item 5, where the project manager will now actually, using the resource finder, replace that role. And in the case that we'll do first, we'll do the architect. You'll replace the architect role with the named resource. And that process, in doing that, it will replace the allocation, and it will actually replace all the tasks and ETCs it'll replace it from the role to the named resource. And that all happens in number 5, but it's left at the soft book state. And then that's communicated to the resource manager in item 6, and the resource manager will go into one of the resource planning portlets and then change the booking status of the named resource from soft book to hard book, which then commits that resource to that project. So that is the process, and we are first going to do the baseline, which is lesson 2, and then the circle items 3 through 6 are lesson 3 for us, where we'll actually do the staffing on the project. Okay, so we're back in Celerity, and we're ready to baseline. So to do that, I am in the project list, and I'm going to select the project that I've been working with as a demo, and that is this NA class demo project. I'll pick that project and go into it, and I am now in the project properties, and we'll see that one of the sublinks under properties is baseline. And so that's where we're going to do the baselining. We'll set the first baseline. So we'll click on that, and it'll bring up the project properties baseline, where we can see what baselines have been established and create new ones. There is a new button to do that from. And like this common architecture we've talked about so many times, there can be a filter on top. It's not shown right now. Expand filter, and then a list below. The list below would be the various baselines that we've done, one of which will be the current one. So let's go ahead. We'll click the new button to create this new baseline. It'll be our first, and we'll give this a name, and I'm just going to call this initial role plan baseline. And I have auto numbering set for baselining in the system, so it automatically put in a revision ID number, and a description. I can just put in here initial plan finalize with roles, and then submit. And that will then create the baseline, and we'll end up with a line below that shows it is the current revision. It's the number 2 that we saw, with the name that I gave it, initial role plan baseline, and it has some start and finish dates and a usage amount. The usage being from the ETC and not from the allocation. Couple of things to mention here. We can baseline at a number of different stages in the project. Typically, those stages would be defined by your organization's PMO. There should be a process of when baselines are required. And then each time you baseline, there would be another baseline line item listed here, one of which would be the current revision that's being used for variance calculations in reports and portlets. There is also an option to update the baseline, so you can select the current baseline and then update it, or you could create a new baseline. I think that it's better to baseline more often than not baseline at all, because if you don't baseline, you miss the opportunity once you've gone by it. If this is a snapshot at a point in time, it can be used for no other reasons than just comparing changes that have occurred in your plan from the point in time of the initial role plan all the roles with resource